ancient army of warriors has been quietly conquering the world.
This is the Terracotta Army. 8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago. One of the greatest wonders of the world.
What if everything we thought we knew about the Terracotta Army is only the surface of something far more controlled, far more intentional, and far more hidden? For decades, the silent soldiers buried beneath the soil of Xi'an have stood as one of history's greatest archaeological discoveries. Thousands of life-sized warriors, frozen in time, guarding the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, each face unique, each position deliberate, a perfect army, built for the afterlife. But what if this army was never meant to be fully seen? When explorer and scientist Albert Lin deployed next-generation AI-powered 3D scanning technology, he wasn't just mapping statues, he was probing the unknown. Scanning deep beneath the earth without breaking a single grain of soil, his team uncovered anomalies that shouldn't exist. Hidden voids, sealed chambers, structured pathways buried beyond reach, patterns that don't match any known design. And then came the most unsettling detail, sections that appear intentionally shielded, as if something below was never meant to be disturbed. This isn't just a tomb, it's a system, a hidden world. And we may have only scratched the surface. Before we expose what the scans really revealed, hit like and subscribe, because some discoveries were never meant to be uncovered. The emperor who refused to die. To understand why someone would build an entire army out of clay, you need to know about Qin Shi Huang. In 221 BCE, he became China's first emperor after conquering every rival kingdom. He unified the country, standardized everything from writing to currency, and built massive projects that still stand today. But Qin Shi Huang had one problem he couldn't solve: death. He became obsessed with finding immortality. He sent ships to mythical islands searching for magic elixirs. He surrounded himself with alchemists and fortune tellers. His court became a laboratory for every crazy theory about eternal life. When he realized he might not escape death, he came up with a backup plan. If he couldn't live forever, he'd build an empire in the afterlife, a complete underground kingdom where he could rule for eternity, and he'd need an army to protect it. Fast forward to 1974. A group of farmers in Xi'an were digging a well during a drought. Their shovels hit something hard, pottery shards, then more pieces. Then what looked like a head? They'd stumbled onto the edge of something massive. When archaeologists arrived, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Buried just beneath farmland were life-sized clay soldiers, hundreds of them, then thousands. Each warrior was unique. Different faces, different expressions, different armor. Some looked stern and experienced. Others seemed younger, more determined. Their hands once held real bronze weapons, swords and crossbows that are still sharp after 2,000 years. The discovery shook the archaeological world. Nothing like this had ever been found. An entire army, frozen in battle formation, waiting underground for over 2 millennia. But here's what most people don't realize. What tourists see today is only a small fraction of what's actually down there. 3 pits, 3 mysteries. So far, archaeologists have uncovered 3 main pits. Each one tells a different part of the story. Pit number 1 is the largest and most famous. This is where you see those dramatic photos of thousands of soldiers lined up in tight rows. It's intimidating. Columns of infantry and chariots arranged like they're about to charge into battle. It's raw military power on display, designed to overwhelm anyone who saw it. Pit number 3 is smaller and more intimate. It seems to represent a command center. High-ranking officers stand around a chariot like they're planning strategy. It's enclosed, almost ceremonial. Some experts think this might have been where the emperor's generals would coordinate the eternal defense of his tomb. But pit number 2? That's where things get interesting. For a long time, pit 2 was considered less important. It's smaller than pit 1, only about 6,000 square meters. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in complexity. This pit isn't just rows of soldiers standing at attention. It's a mix of different military units: kneeling archers, standing archers, elite cavalry on horseback, armored infantry, and 4-horse war chariots. They're not just randomly placed either. The formations suggest real battlefield tactics: flanking positions, firing arcs, mobile strike units. It's like someone designed a fully functional military force and then buried it underground. And here's the thing. Excavation in Pit 2 has been incredibly slow. Not because archaeologists aren't interested, but because of what they found when they started digging in the early 1990s. Unlike the figures in Pit 1, many warriors in Pit 2 still had traces of their original paint. Reds, blues, greens, blacks, colors that had somehow survived underground for over 2,000 years. But when they tried to remove the figures, disaster struck. The paint started fading almost immediately. Exposed to air and light, the colors oxidized and disappeared within hours. Entire statues lost their brilliance in minutes. So, archaeologists made a tough decision. Stop digging until we have better technology. That pause lasted for over 20 years. Technology changes everything. By 2015, everything had changed. New conservation methods were finally ready. Teams could now use ground-penetrating radar to see what was buried without actually digging. They had 3D mapping tools, micro-excavation grids that let them work layer by layer. Even the environment inside the pits could be controlled. Humidity, temperature, light exposure, all carefully monitored to protect the fragile paint and clay. This is where Albert Lin's work comes in. Using advanced scanning technology, Lin and his team began mapping the entire site in ways that were never possible before. These weren't just surface scans. The imaging tools could see through meters of compacted earth, revealing structures, voids, and patterns hidden deep underground. And what they found was unsettling. The scans showed chambers that haven't been opened, corridors that lead to unknown spaces, patterns in the ground that suggest there's far more down there than anyone expected. Some areas showed signs of deliberate engineering, structures built to stay sealed, protected by layers of earth and possibly traps. The most chilling part? The scans suggest the Terracotta Army we've uncovered might just be the outer defense. There could be entire sections still buried, maybe even more armies, more chambers, more secrets. Since resuming excavation with this new technology, researchers have discovered warriors with better preservation than anything found in Pit 1, horses with incredible anatomical detail, chariot fragments that show just how sophisticated Qin engineering really was. The facial features on some figures are so refined, it's clear certain sculptors were given more creative freedom, or were commissioned to create statues for higher-ranking roles. This wasn't mass production. This was art mixed with purpose. 2025. The general who changed everything. In early 2025, after nearly a decade of careful work in Pit 2, archaeologists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the academic world. They found a general, not just any general. This was only the 10th such figure ever discovered among the 8,000 known warriors, and the first one found in Pit 2 since the 1990s. The team was working on the northern edge of the pit, an area they thought would only have cavalry and low-ranking officers. But as they brushed away the soil, something different appeared, a tall, ornate headdress. Then a broad chest covered in layered, ribboned armor, hands clasped in a commanding pose, and a face, stern, authoritative, unmistakable. This wasn't a regular soldier, this was a leader. Flanking him were 2 officers. Behind him, 5 infantrymen. Nearby, 3 terracotta horses and 2 chariots, all arranged in a formation that screamed command structure. But what made this general truly exceptional was the level of detail. His armor wasn't just carved, it was crafted. Each plate was distinct and symmetrical, with ornamental knots and tassels still visible after more than 2,000 years underground. His face showed the same individuality that makes every terracotta warrior unique. Wide-set eyes, a stern brow, a carved mustache. But there was something more here, a weight, a presence. And then they found the paint. Traces of vermilion red and lapis blue still clung to his armor and robe. These weren't common colors. They were expensive mineral-based pigments reserved for elite ranks. In ancient China, red meant vitality and good fortune. Blue symbolized immortality and depth. Together, they marked this figure as someone of supreme importance. The general had been encased in a protective pocket of silt that helped preserve the pigments, something that rarely happens. Most figures lose their color within hours of exposure, But this time, conservators were able to document and stabilize the paint before it faded. Zhu Hong, the head of the excavation project, described the moment. This figure was likely the highest-ranking military commander of this unit. We believe he may have been tasked with leading Qin Shi Huang's chariot troops in the afterlife, a role reserved only for the most trusted elite. Dr. Janice Shujan Li, a Chinese funerary art expert from Oxford, added, "This general changes everything we assumed about the distribution of power within the army. He wasn't just protecting the tomb, he was leading it." The discovery elevated Pit 2's status overnight. For decades, it was seen as secondary to Pit 1. Now, it's clear this section housed a powerful, elite force, led by a commanding figure whose rediscovery is rewriting history. Every detail tells a story. Let's talk about what makes this general so special beyond just his rarity. First, his size. He stands nearly 2 meters tall, slightly larger than life. In ancient Chinese art, physical size was used to show power and dominance. The bigger you were, the more important you were. This wasn't just a stylistic choice, it was a message. His armor is unlike anything worn by regular soldiers. While most infantrymen wear simple protective plates, his armor is layered, ribboned, and decorated with embossed patterns that look like scaled dragons. Dragons weren't just cool designs, they symbolized imperial strength and celestial order. Wearing them meant you were close to the emperor himself. Then there's his headgear. The general wears a tall, winged headdress with delicately curved ends. This style was historically associated with high command and nobility. It wasn't just about rank, it signaled proximity to the emperor. Anyone looking at this figure, even in the afterlife, would instantly know this man was important. His hands are clasped calmly in front of him. Not mid-march, not drawing a weapon, just composed, ready, watching. It's a pose that combines discipline with vigilance, a sentinel rather than a warrior in motion. The sculptors knew exactly what they were doing. Every gesture was deliberate. Every detail carried meaning. The traces of pigment tell us even more. Under microscopic analysis, researchers found vermilion red, azurite blue, and malachite green on his armor and sleeves. These weren't ordinary dyes. They were rare mineral-based pigments. Red for vitality, blue for immortality, green for renewal. Together, they created a color-coded signal of eternal command. But perhaps the most striking thing is his face. Sharply defined cheekbones, a firm jaw, subtly furrowed brows. The Qin sculptors weren't trying to create exact replicas of real people, but they added enough variation to make each warrior feel individual and realistic. This general embodies that philosophy perfectly. Human in detail, but divine in presence. He's not just a statue. He's a message carved in clay, an embodiment of order, strength, and absolute loyalty that was meant to last forever. What this tells us about the Army's true purpose. The General's discovery does more than add another impressive figure to the collection. It completely reshapes how we understand the Terracotta Army's structure and purpose. Until now, most experts thought Pit 2 was just a diverse support unit, important, but secondary to the massive infantry ranks in Pit 1. But finding this high-ranking officer changes that interpretation. Pit 2 might not be a secondary force at all. It might be the operational heart of the entire system. Think about it. Qin armies in real life were built on efficiency, discipline, and centralized command. The general's presence in Pit 2, surrounded by cavalry, archers, infantry, and chariots, suggests this pit represented an elite tactical unit, maybe even the emperor's personal guard, or a mobile strike force designed to defend the tomb against supernatural threats in the afterlife. The arrangement of troops around the general isn't random. Archers are placed in outer ranks, kneeling and standing in staggered lines. That's classic defensive and offensive coordination. Chariots and cavalry occupy the central corridors. And now, with the general positioned just behind one of the chariot formations, the layout starts to look less like decoration and more like an actual battlefield chain of command. This army was meant to function, not just symbolically, but practically. The level of realism supports this theory. The cavalry horses have bridles and reins, indicating discipline and readiness. The chariots were originally fitted with metal components and drawn by horses modeled with astonishing anatomical precision. The soldiers carry real bronze weapons, many still sharp after 2,000 years. These aren't props, they're tools. The general's presence strongly suggests each pit had a unique military role. Pit 1 for mass ground combat, Pit 3 as headquarters or command post, and Pit 2 as the elite vanguard, a flexible, highly trained force ready to respond to any threat. What Albert Lin's scans revealed aligns with this theory. The imaging shows patterns in the ground consistent with deliberate military organization, structures that suggest staging areas, corridors that could represent supply lines or movement routes. If the scans are accurate, there may be entire sections of this underground army still waiting to be uncovered, each with its own purpose, its own commander, its own mission. 50 years of digging into the unknown. The 2025 general's discovery comes at a perfect moment. The 50th anniversary of the Terracotta Army's accidental find in 1974. What started with a few farmers uncovering pottery shards has become one of the most ambitious archaeological projects in history. But the journey hasn't been smooth. In the early years, excavations were rushed. The world was excited. Media attention was overwhelming. Scientists didn't have the tools or knowledge to preserve what they were finding. Entire statues lost their brilliant colors within hours of being exposed to air. Reds, blues, purples, gone forever. Whole sections of the mausoleum stayed buried simply because digging them up would destroy them. That's changed dramatically over the last 50 years. Today, archaeologists work in controlled environments. They excavate inside sealed pits that maintain specific humidity and air composition to protect delicate materials. Ground-penetrating radar lets them see what's buried without disturbing it. Micro-excavation tools allow them to work millimeter by millimeter. High-resolution 3Ds. Scanning creates digital maps of structures that might never be physically uncovered. Pigment preservation techniques like polyethylene glycol treatments and vacuum sealing now make it possible to stabilize and even reconstruct color layers that would have been lost decades ago. This is where Albert Lin's technology becomes crucial. His team uses advanced imaging that can penetrate meters of compacted earth without moving a single grain of soil. The data they collect reveals voids, chambers, and structural patterns that traditional excavation would take years or decades to uncover. And they can do it without risking damage to priceless artifacts. Equally important is the collaboration happening now. This isn't just archaeologists anymore. Conservationists, materials scientists, historians, military scholars, and even AI researchers work together. Machine learning models are being trained to detect figure placement patterns, suggest military formations, and reconstruct missing pieces with stunning accuracy. The site has also transformed how the world views ancient Chinese history. What was once studied primarily through a Western archaeological lens is now led by Chinese scholars. Institutions like the Shanxi Provincial Institute for Archaeology have driven much of the research, with global universities contributing through cooperative projects. This 50-year milestone isn't just a marker of time, it's a turning point. The 2025 General's discovery honors decades of patient work while showing how far technology has come. What once relied on trowels and brushes now uses satellites and spectral imaging. But at its core, the goal remains the same: uncover the truth buried beneath the soil. The sealed tomb, a dangerous mystery. At the heart of this vast underground world lies something even more mysterious: a massive burial mound believed to hold the remains of Qin Shi Huang. And despite decades of research, excavation, and technological advancement, no one has ever opened it. Think about that for a second. One of the most important tombs in human history, still completely sealed. Ancient texts describe something almost unbelievable. They claim the emperor's tomb is surrounded by flowing rivers of mercury, designed to mimic entire landscapes, complete with oceans and waterways. For years, many dismissed this as myth or exaggeration, but modern soil scans tell a different story. Elevated mercury levels have been detected around the mound, far higher than normal. suggesting those ancient records might not just be legend. They might be reality. And if that's true, this tomb wasn't just built to honor a ruler. It was built to defend itself. Mercury isn't just symbolic, it's highly toxic. In a sealed environment, the fumes alone could be lethal. If the chamber has remained untouched for over 2,000 years, opening it could instantly release dangerous gases. In other words, the tomb may have been engineered as a kind of ancient security system, one that punishes anyone who tries to break in. Now, add modern technology into the picture. When Albert Lin and his team scanned beneath the surface using advanced AI-powered imaging, they didn't just find empty space. The data revealed complex underground structures, possible chambers, corridors, and architectural patterns hidden deep beneath the mound. But here's the problem. The images aren't perfectly clear. We can see that something is there, but we don't yet understand what it is. Are these rooms filled with artifacts, traps, preserved relics, or something else entirely? Opening the tomb isn't just dangerous because of Mercury. There's another risk, one that worries archaeologists just as much. The moment a sealed chamber is exposed to oxygen, the contents inside can begin to deteriorate almost instantly. Paint fades, materials crack, organic matter disintegrates. In trying to uncover history, we could end up destroying it forever. That's why authorities in China have taken a firm stance. The tomb will remain sealed, at least for now. What this means. What Albert Lin and his team have uncovered changes everything we thought we knew about the Terracotta Army. For years, the rows of silent warriors near Xi'an were seen as the main attraction, the centerpiece of the entire site. Thousands of life-sized soldiers, each uniquely crafted, standing in formation. It already felt massive, complete. But now, it's clear. That's just the outer layer. The scan suggests something far bigger lies beneath the surface. A sprawling underground complex that extends well beyond the excavated pits. And suddenly, the Terracotta Army doesn't look like a standalone discovery anymore. It looks like the entrance to something much larger. And the more researchers study it, the more intentional it all appears. These warriors weren't randomly placed. They were arranged with purpose, almost like a real military formation frozen in time. Different pits seemed to serve different roles. Infantry units, chariots, archers. Each section fits into a larger strategic layout. In fact, a recently identified high-ranking figure, believed to be a general, was found positioned exactly where you would expect a commanding officer to stand, surrounded by the very units he would lead into battle. This wasn't just art. This was design, strategy, military precision on a scale that still feels almost impossible to recreate today. And if the underground scans are even partially accurate, then what we've seen so far is only a fraction of what exists. There could be more soldiers, more officers, more chambers filled with objects, weapons, or knowledge that have remained hidden for over 2,000 years. Waiting. Final thought. So now we're left with a question that doesn't have an easy answer. Should we open the tomb? On one hand, the potential is unimaginable. Whatever lies inside could rewrite history. It could reveal secrets about ancient engineering, culture, and beliefs that we've only guessed at until now. But on the other hand, opening it could mean losing those secrets forever. Right now, technology like AI scanning gives us a rare advantage. We can explore without disturbing. We can observe without destroying. But curiosity has a way of pushing boundaries. Sooner or later, someone will want to go deeper. And when that moment comes, humanity will have to make a choice. Is knowing the truth worth the risk of erasing it? Or are some mysteries meant to remain sealed, protected by time, silence, and the intentions of those who built them? What do you think? Drop your answer in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.